Hey everybody, and welcome back to Creative Youth Studio Season 2, Episode 13.
I'm so excited. We are so excited to have you all today. So today's episode, we are going to be diving into college auditions. We know that most of our students who are prospective college students have already applied and done all of that, but it is always something good to know, especially for young high schoolers and middle schoolers who are interested in going to college one day, because the college admissions process for theater or the arts is very different from if you're applying to be an academic major. So we are so fortunate today to have two wonderful guests, and I'm so excited, and I hope you all enjoy this episode.
Speaking of our guests, we're going to hop right into an interview with Jada and Camila Castro, who is a student.
Hi, my name is Jada and I'm here with Camila, and I will be interviewing her on the audition process going into college. I'm so excited for this interview, so let's get started. So Camila, tell me about yourself and how did you get into theater?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Ensenada, Baja California, but my parents took a sabbatical in Pasadena for a year when I was in 7th grade, and that was where I was in my first show. I did a Shakespeare play and I did a musical, and I had never done theater at that level before. I mean, it was a small middle school, so it really wasn't that big a deal, but I just loved it so much. I thought it was so exciting. I got to work with all of these different kids from different backgrounds who I probably never would have even spoken to before, being in a show with them. So I just loved that about theater, and just so exciting to be able to tell stories in that way. So then after that year, I moved back to Ensenada, but we really didn't have that much theater, or the same type of theater, I guess, the way it is here in the US. And so I was fortunate enough that my parents were willing to move here to San Diego so that I could do high school here and then hopefully college as well. And so for all 4 years of high school, I've been super involved in theater at La Jolla High and at La Jolla Playhouse, doing theater summer programs and all the shows at my high school. And drama club, however I was able to be involved. And then senior year, I applied to colleges for theater programs, and here I am.
Yes. Tell me about what programs you auditioned for and what colleges even.
Yeah, sure. So when I went into the process, I wanted to make sure to have of good variety, not necessarily all conservatory programs, not necessarily all, B.A programs. I wanted to have a good balance, and also, ones that were more competitive, ones that were more in the middle, and then ones that were maybe not so competitive. So I ended up applying to a total of 11 schools. I applied to Boston University, the theater school at DePaul University, Northwestern, NYU, University of British Columbia in Canada, Syracuse University, Emerson College, Muhlenberg College, CSU Fullerton, Marymount Manhattan College, and Fordham University. So I know a lot of people usually audition for, upwards of 18 schools, but I couldn't do that to myself. I knew it was just break me completely. And so I figured, if I do my research and I make sure that I have a good amount, but, a good balance between competitive and not so competitive, then it'll be okay. And it did turn out okay. So, yeah.
And I'm supposed to ask this later, but I'm too interested. Which one are you committing to?
NYU.
Oh my gosh, congratulations! That is
Thank
so
you.
exciting. I'm gonna cry for you, Camilla. Whoa, that is so cool.
Yes, it's
Are you so excited?
Yeah, I bought a travel book and everything because I've actually never been to the East Coast, but I'm ready. I'm so
You're gonna
excited.
love it. Love it. Oh my gosh. That is so amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go back into the process. So, can you tell me, like, step by step, like, how you went into auditioning?
Yeah, sure. So each individual university has a bunch of different requirements, obviously. So the very first step was, to research all of the schools and all of the requirements for, monologues or songs or dances, because I did apply to a couple for musical theater, but mostly theater in general or acting. So writing down all of those requirements and then looking for different monologues was, I think, probably the longest process for me out of like the entire process, because I just really wanted to make sure that whatever monologues I did, they really spoke to me, and I wanted to read the entire play that the monologue was from. So I started out probably beginning of the summer before senior year, and I didn't find all of my monologues until, I don't know, like a month or two before auditions started. I was, yeah, I really wanted to make sure that the monologues that I chose felt right. And I also made sure to choose more than just like the two that I would definitely need. I wanted to have four total so that if I got really tired of one day, it didn't show in my audition, and so I could just switch to a different one that felt fresh and more exciting. Um, let's see, and then I guess songs as well. I made sure to listen to the entire soundtrack of whatever musical the songs that I chose were from. For dances, I didn't use like a dance coach or like a vocal coach or like an acting coach, just because my family can't afford it. And that was very daunting, I have to admit, but it is possible. I was very scared that it wouldn't be, that I would have, that other people would have the upper hand because they had those resources, but it's really not the case. So, for my dance that I recorded, I just looked up different YouTube tutorials and chose ones that I could do comfortably, and then I recorded in the spare bedroom in my house. So yeah, that was pretty much the process.
Wow, so you like really went into depth with like every piece that you made it count. I really like that. I'm definitely gonna steal that advice. Next, what do you think you do well during the process? Like, what was your favorite part of your audition?
um, I definitely think that I'm an actor first, even though I did audition for a couple of schools' musical theater programs. I definitely feel strongest in terms of acting. So whatever it was that I did, whether it was a song or a dance, I really made sure that I was telling the story, because I knew that that would be one of my strengths and they would see that. Um, and in general, I think choosing the right monologue was so important for me. There was one that I did, it was Eurydice's monologue from Eurydice by Sarah Rull. And I don't know, just every single time I did it, it felt slightly different, and I always felt very connected. And I think that's just so magical when you can find a piece that really speaks to you in that way.
Yes, definitely. Next, what would you change about your audition?
Um, I mean, this isn't really something that I would be able to change per se, but just going into it feeling a little bit more relaxed. I would always get so incredibly nervous. And I mean, this is just part of my type A personality, but I'm a bit of a perfectionist. And so whatever I do, I want to get it right the first time. And with a process like this, that's so, I mean, things are just completely out of your control. You can control how prepared you are, and that's pretty much it. And especially this year that everything was online, auditions weren't the way they usually are. You know, there's a lot of different components that are getting thrown in your direction. So I just found myself feeling so overwhelmed. And so just maybe taking a step back and taking a breath would have helped me a lot. Obviously, I tried to relax as much as possible, but at the end of the day, it was very, very nerve-wracking.
Yes, definitely. I remember like just being nervous, like just because I was like applying to colleges. It's just a nerve-wracking experience. I feel like, yeah, I totally understand you with that. What helped you the most during this process? Like it could be anything or anyone, just like what helped you.
Yeah, I would definitely say um, I took some free voice for actors classes that were offered via Zoom. I had taken a couple singing lessons with Vanessa Dinning, but then when the pandemic started, I had to stop, and financial reasons. But then she continued to hold these free sessions for an hour once a week, and so it was a very, very tiny group of us. And so we could go and work on Shakespeare. She would show us different kinds of voice warm-ups and things like that. So I just made sure that any opportunity that I had to practice one of my college monologues or get some advice, to do that. And she was just so incredibly helpful for me. And that resource was very important for my process.
Yeah, well, that's so cool. I never heard of a free voice acting class. I remember I also had to cancel just because like COVID and financial reasons. So that's so cool that you got that for free. That's amazing. Lastly, what is your best piece of advice that you would give to people auditioning for theater in colleges?
I think definitely do your research. Start, I mean, there are people that have been preparing for college auditions since they were 4 years old, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. I started looking into different schools probably beginning of my junior year, and really looking into different kinds of schools so that you don't have this huge long list that you're applying for, I think is so helpful in not getting burnt out. Because, for a majority of these schools, they're not just taking your artistic ability into account, they're also taking your academics into account. So you want to make sure that you're writing your essays and that they're good. um, and so just really paring down your list so that you have a good variety of schools and you don't feel too overwhelmed when audition season starts, because for some people it's just absolutely crazy and I don't know how they do it. But I found that, 10, 12 schools is a good number.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, Camilla, for coming to this interview and for your time. This has been super helpful.
I'm so glad.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Hope you enjoyed.
Thank you very much, Jada. That was a fantastic interview.
Yes, thank you so, so much. So now we are going to move on to Emily, who is going to be interviewing acting coach and mentor, Jeffrey Ingman. So take it away, Emily.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Creative Youth Studios. So today I'll be interviewing Jeffrey Ingman, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for roughly 3 years now. Do you think it's been 3 years?
Yeah, it's been about 3 years. You were in 2 conservatories and then training for audition, yeah.
So please introduce yourself, talk about your experience with coaching auditioners for college.
Okay, hi, I am Jeffrey Ingman, as she said, and I've been coaching students specifically for coach professionals and college students, but this is about college. And so for the last 7 years or so, my focus has gone into coaching high school students for B.F.A programs and for undergraduates into M.F.A programs. I've had a huge, fortunately, knock on wood, I've had a huge clientele base. All have done very well in getting to the schools that they're looking for. I have a particular methodology that I teach, mostly because I was never taught myself. I ended up going to performing school and then Rutgers University in acting, but I never had a method myself. I never had, you know, something that I could hold on to. And because there are so many steps to getting into college, there's you know, the essay, there's the pre-screen, there's the getting through to the audition, there's the live audition, and then there's the post work that you need to do in order to maintain your spot on the top of the pile. So when I work with students, as Emily can tell you, but when I work with students, we go through the beginning process of just getting to know the kind of material that you should be looking for, a really efficient way to look for material. And then I also have some material that I help provide only after a certain length of time, because the material needs to reflect who you are, how you see the world, your values, and also show whatever range and whatever is required by any particular university. Yes, so that's been a part of the training. Hundreds of actors possibly when you take all of my coaching, many young people trying to get to the futures, and that's actually the baseline of it for me. I found my heart again in the theater as a practitioner. I've been doing this since I was 12, taught for many years, and it's in this place right here where I'm coaching and mentoring students, where my heart has happened again. It's lit up, it lights up. I find great joy in helping someone move, whether it's for, you know, moving from their high school to their program they're really excited about, or an undergrad trying to get to grad school, or even actors trying to move towards LA or New York. To be able to mentor, that's one side of what I do, and then to be able to coach with the methodology that not only makes auditioning more enjoyable, but also because I worked for so long in the university setting, I've been on committees before, URTA, Kennedy Center, auditions, those kinds of things. And SCTC back east. I've spent sort of this obsessive, well, really over about 10 years, obsession just trying to figure out how people get from the beginning to their set goal, and that's the overview of what I do. Usually we start somewhere at the very beginning, somewhere around March of every year. Then we go through and we take nice open spaces of time to let the student or the actor try to figure out, you know, some of those tasks that I'm setting forth. And then, you know, as we move into the fall, we start to gear up for pre-screens and for any auditions, whether they're like national auditions, like National Unified Auditions or URTA, for example, or a thespian kind of audition like in Nebraska. Whatever it is, we try to set that up and get that going. And then we also try to get to schools. You know, we try to get in contact with the schools and with students prior to doing, let's say, a final audition in January or February. And there's a whole big thing that I do about essays and contact that I think has proven itself very effective. And then of course the audition and the interview, which becomes a key to, I believe, entrance. So at least it's proved itself out that way. Yeah, and then I've got some pretty cool stories about people who don't have enough money, and then the money shows up, or they don't feel like they have the resources because they're from small town somewhere in Texas or in, you know, or very far away, like across the world, like in Singapore, and thinking I can't possibly make this leap into a great program. And fortunately, that gets proved wrong a lot. So it's really cool to watch, you know, the world open up for people too.
So for those who don't know, how are college auditions different than traditional auditions?
Well, there's a lot more front work with the college audition than there is in traditional auditions. It's because, so really a lot has to do with how you look for a school. right? So everybody, they'll have a school, colleges often will frame it this way, find a school that's within your reach, find a school that you think may have greater competition, and then look for schools that also seem almost impossible to get into. And that's oftentimes how they frame it. I frame it a little differently. I actually don't care about the levels of these schools. I only care whether your values are being lined up. So again, different from the regular audition where it's not so much about my values, it's really about what's immediately needed from me, from whoever's calling me, whether it be my agent, casting director, or a posting of a particular cast list, and I submit my picture and resume, and then I'm actually going in to that particular theater company and auditioning. For film and television, it's a whole different topic, which I won't really join in right now, but let's just say that they are very specific. Oftentimes you get very little time to even just prepare. Really, auditioning for college is about preparation first. So coming in with monologues, not just 1 or 2 or 3, but really something like 5 monologues, which I often request my clients to have, upwards to 5, because that all reflect a different part of who they are, right? And those are to represent the person that I want to see in this audition, which is you, which is all the interesting parts of you. And once you start to do the research on the schools, which again is all part of the pre-work, the research on the schools, I ask you to start looking for instance, faculty, alumni, history. We start to look at who is there. Are there people who look like you at this college or university that you're looking at for your B.F.A. or M.F.A.? What kind of plays do they do? And because you really are in the driver's seat at the very, very beginning, you really are. But the more information you have prior to walking in, the more powerful you become inside that room. So the other part of that is the student body that's currently there. There are programs who they ebb and flow. Programs change. So rankings don't mean a lot to me, because you can have a ranking that puts you in the top 10 and the administration can be in flux, and it's going to take 2 or 3 years or something like that for that program to find itself. I have a few examples of this that I give my students, about theater programs that were really high up on the list at one point, and then something happened, faculty left or administration changed, and they got bumped, they got forgotten about, right? Until someone comes back and revitalizes the program, then it shoots up again. So we don't approach it from this list of, the top 10, top 20. We approach it from your values, and students are your best resource on campus. So we start there too. So you're looking for work, or you're looking for material, you're starting to investigate schools. There are some very candid questions that we start to address. We do address the money situation, but I don't spend a lot of time there, as Emily can tell you. But we address oftentimes, location. We address, like I said, faculty, alumni. We address the program as a whole. If you're a B.F.A, do they have an M.F.A. attached to the B.F.A? Is the B.F.A. priority, or is the M.F.A. priority? How many B.A.s compared to the B.F.A.s? So we do this really internalized deep dive into the school that way. And then we start making contact as much as we can, usually somewhere around August, September, to students who are there, who go to this program. And we do that through like Facebook pages, group pages, or we just call the administration and we say, I'd like to talk to somebody about the school. Whenever you go to visit a school, right, a lot of people will go visit schools and they'll get, one person to sort of walk them through the program, let's say. My clients should go with questions, specific questions, and then also try to meet up with people that are in that program outside of their tour. So we do things like that. And then we get ready for the actual audition, which we prepare for. And it is a different style of audition. I call it the packaged audition because it is packaged. It's got a very specific structure attached to it. I can speak to that later if you want, but it's a very specific structure. that speaks primarily to college and to college auditions.
Would you say that that structure comes from it just being a completely different goal than a traditional audition?
That's such a great question. Well, a couple of things. It's got its own kind of anxiety. All auditions have its own kind of anxiety. There's something unique about, there is a unique quality about trying to get into a program versus trying to get into a play, film, or television, you know, that kind of thing. And because it's such a long process, I think the buildup of anxiety becomes different. You know, and you're not sleeping for longer periods of time. You have more anxiety for long periods of time. Your belief that the world is going to end if you don't get into this one school happens for a long period of time. So I address that very directly because I recognized it over the many years. Like I say these last 7 years, the truth is I've been training people to get to good schools and out into the workplace for the last 20 years. But my focus right now is trying to get people, you know, into great programs and to help them find their dream schools or their dream, whether it's to go to school or not. So yeah, I love that question. I do think it's different because of the way it's also set up, you know. And I will tell you this, as Emily can tell you, you know, there's this kind of put on quality that is often taught, and I hold no beliefs about this in terms of good or bad teaching, but there is a kind of, you know, stand in the box, smile, have all the right and proper questions when you sit down to interview. And I will give you one anecdote. When I used to recruit, and I recruited at one point for University of Montana, and meaning I was the head of the program, and I was out for recruitment. And I was the first teaching job, and I really didn't understand. My first head of the program, and it was my first real teaching job. And so I noticed that I was exhausted by the way young people entered the room, sat down, and talked to me. Everybody was so on point that I had to practically, I kept thinking, why are my shoulders hurting? Why am I so tense? And so after really analyzing these big auditions like SETC, one of the largest theater auditions in the country at the time, I ran the professional auditions there, the Kennedy Center auditions, and tri-state auditions, those kinds of things. I've been obsessed with auditioning for a long time. But I've noticed that the people who move through, the people who were most comfortable with, the people who I remember are the people who are simply trying to share their values with me and seek out my values as an administrator in the school, as the recruiter, or even as the head of program. We're trying to see if we can live together for the next 4 or 3 years, depending on what it is, right? And so that's a very different approach than, let's say, I'm auditioning and I get called back and I'm looking at this particular role. There's a much different makeup there. So
I think, something I learned from you that really helped with my anxiety was, like, you do the work to make sure that, you know, the school has your values. So that way you don't walk in already knowing nothing. You walk in knowing that they have your values. And then it's just about not being yourself, because that sounds so cliche, but just kind of relaxing into realizing you're worthy enough of a person to exist in any space. And then if you do share their values and you hopefully show them that you do, then you'll get into that space.
Yeah, beautifully articulated. Absolutely.
So talk about, like, the values of the schools. How would you instruct students to figure out whether or not a school does share their values?
Well, obviously, there are schools that are doing work that up to the point of, let's say, high school or even college sometimes, you just haven't been exposed to that work. So you don't even know what it is. I mean, some people often come to me and they'll be like, well, what is Suzuki? What is viewpoints? You know, they'll ask about a methodology or a way that this program works. And that's actually, you need to figure that out. We need to find it. One of the ways is to try to get somebody on the line with you, so you can ask questions that speak to your values. You know, I always say avoid questions like, how much does it cost? How do you live? You know, what is it like transportation wise there? Those are important questions, but those should come when you're closer to getting accepted or getting accepted. The questions that you're really trying to figure out is, what does it do what does this program do for me? Let's say your value is to step right out of college. By the way, I don't place my value here. I don't place my point of view in this. Everybody finds their way in a program and out of a program and into professional life in their own way. And what I'm here to do is help facilitate in whatever way you're choosing to move. I offer wisdom, I hope, to that, but I don't direct that. So I just want to be really clear about that. So when it comes to my values, I'm asking the school, I'm asking people like, is there time with the faculty members so that I can work through something with them if I have, difficulty? Maybe that's important to you. Is it more lecture driven? Do I have a lot of writing to do in that program? This is big for MFA programs. There's sort of academically minded programs and professionally minded programs. So, I want to know whether that's what their values are as it relates to that. When I mentioned the idea of what's the balance of the program, if it's an MFA, BFA, and BA program, if I'm in the BA, BFA, or MFA, for instance, if I'm in an MFA program and a lot of weight goes to the BFAs and I can see some imbalance, I'm about to spend a lot of money on that MFA. I want to make sure that whatever they're giving me as it relates to this other professional program, the BFA, am I getting the resources I need? The fastest way that you can figure out your values is what you have, and it's hard to say because sometimes we don't know, but what I feel I need. Self-assessment is a huge thing, as Emily will tell you. Self-assessment, being able to understand what's missing, right? And of course, I can see a lot because I'm working with the students myself about, in terms of just, how they walk into space, what they know about how to do good work in the monologue, that kind of thing. What right questions, actor questions do you need to answer? I learn a lot, and I will oftentimes make observations. Like I notice, when you're walking into space, there's sort of a collapse. I can make up a bunch of them, but the idea is that if you've been told as a student, so self-assessment, I think, is the short answer to your question. I want to self-assess. Where do I learn best? What do I need to learn, right? And then what is the kind of person in the room that I need to learn from? And some of these are going to be answered by students from the programs because they're going to tell you about the teachers that they learn from. Some of this is going to be just based on what you observe, which I'm going to recommend people go and try to find videotapes or productions or interviews of the faculty or that are at that program, because you can hear their voice, you can hear what they're talking about, what they focus on, those kinds of things. And then of course you get to their page and you'll start trying to dissect what it is they're saying there. And I have a whole process of that. That can be overwhelming when you get to it, as Emily can tell you. You can get to these university pages and it's just too much information. You can't quite tell what they're trying to do or say. Even the list of classes doesn't tell you much, right? Because it's not just what they're teaching you, it's how they teach it, right? And then, like I said, you want to match up the values to the end of that program, what it is in the program when you start to move towards the finish line. This is huge with me. So I emphasize that. I'll give you one small example, if it's all right. I'll give you one small example. Let's say that you're in a program. They purport to be a professional program. This happens a lot, not happens a lot, but can be part of an MFA issue. So academically, you learn how to be a good actor. You get the tools that you need, but you go out into the world and you don't know what a 3-camera comedy class is. Or what that even what it is, what's 3-camera comedy, right? Or what's the difference between a manager and an agent? And what'll happen is a lot of schools will focus on bringing someone in. I used to do the same thing. I'd bring professionals in to talk to my students, and that's great. But honestly, a program needs to provide you with something at least by your last semester that starts to prepare you for the steps into the world. MBAs do not have this problem if it's a good program. They prepare people to move into the world of whatever their emphasis is in business. Doctors, the same thing. So I hold a pretty high and sometimes feels like an impossible standard to both BFA and MFA on this level. I myself started to incorporate it at a school that I taught at for years, to try to get people to move forward on this, to get the student, to support the student as they move into the spaces of the professional world. Or if it's an B.F.A, you know, do they want to go get their MFA? And that'll be based on what, again, the assessment. Did I receive what I needed to confidently move into the world I am training for? And I hold no judgments about programs in this regard, because it's all about resources. The question is what is your value in it? Well, what do you think you're looking for? You know,
For people who are still kind of like looking to find what they value in schools, would you say a lot of that like depends on your goals specifically within the industry too?
Yes, part of that answer is absolutely yes. The thing is that sometimes you just don't know what the industry has to offer. I mean, you know what it is to be an actor in a play, or you know what it is to do a commercial because you have a local agent or something like that, right? But to be in the industry has its own, you know, that's why you see so many people over Zoom right now, like throwing information to actors about what it is to be an actor in LA, for instance, or an actor in New York. And that's all very valuable, and I would take everything I could get on that information from the outside. I think what you want to know is the thing is it's, for a young actor, it's hard to assess what I need. Yeah. You know, it's easier to know what I know. Like, I've heard about this methodology. I did 2 weeks of Meisner, therefore I understand something about Meisner. But that's not the point. The point is, because you only know 2 weeks of it. If there was something in that work, let's say, I'm just using Meisner as an example, that you really found powerful, useful, meaningful, well, then I might start using that as one of the ways in which I start to determine the schools I'm looking at. If you were in a Lee Strasberg LA summer program that they have, you know, and I found that work to be of value to me and it seemed powerful to me, I might start using that as one of the guideposts to finding a program. So what am I saying? It's partly what I know because I've been taught something. It's partly about my experience, like you're with, you know, you've been working through the Old Globe, you were in the conservatory, you know, 2 really wonderful locations, 2 groups of people who are passionate about what they do. If you're listening to the values of others and you link into a value that they share, I would go to that person and say, where did you go to school? Because, and did your value, did you meet up with the school that you trained at? Is this a place that you would recommend someone who shares my values? You know, would you recommend someone like me go to it? So I call it the backdoor approach, because a lot of the front page information is very impressive. But when you start to dig down and you start to talk to people more than just an administrator who's a good salesman for their program, you really do get, you get a lot more personal information. And what'll start to happen is your values will adjust. You'll be like, oh yeah, that means something to me, or that means something to me. One last example about that. So there's a young actor here who went to NYU. Every year I have 1 or 2 students who end up in NYU, or, you know, clients who end up at NYU, knock on wood, that if that's where they want to go, that's great. So one person, you know, because they go to New York and they're there for 2 weeks or a week to see Broadway shows, and it's amazing and it's electric and there's great food, and there's all these wonderful things about New York, and you know, you're like, I'm going to NYU or Columbia or to Pace or something like that, right? And so I can understand the enthusiasm. I know why you're excited about it. I remember when I went back east for the first time, it was the most thrilling thing in the world, but that's not necessarily going to reflect the next 3 to 4 years that you're going to live there, because living there is very different, right? So, you know, so this young person went there, and they've let me tell the story before. They went there, they were there for a semester, and it became winter there, and they hated it. They absolutely hated it. Now, you know, I'm all for staying, you know, working it out. Maybe it's something you need to learn. But this person was completely and utterly miserable. And the only reason they went to NYU, the only one, is not because they did a bunch of research, because he wasn't my client. It's because it was NYU. And that's not enough. It's just not enough. You need to know where you're going to be. And then you need to understand the world around it. The difference between UCLA, if anybody knows, and USC are two dynamically different environments. So you've got to be ready for, you know, the one you want, right? And you're going to look to the one you want. So you do a lot of research. When I say location, I'm not talking casually. I'm not saying Chicago, LA, or New York. I'm saying we really need to look at what it is. Emily can tell you this. The fact is the difference between the Long Island University's Brooklyn School, which I think has a different name, and the LIU, right? LIU.
It's the post campus, yeah.
Are like two dynamically different campuses.
Even though they're the same school.
Even though they're the same school. So, you know, so fortunately she gets the debate right now of which one to pick if that's the place she wants to choose. So anyway, yes, I hope I answered that question for you.
Yeah. So for anyone here who might be interested in having you as a coach, where can they find you?
Well, if I knew I had to be this prepared, I would have had a little card to show you or something. So you can get a hold of me in a couple of ways. You can go to jeffreyingman.com, and I've got a little, you know, and you can see what others say about me, and I give you an idea of the work that I've done and the schools that my clients go to. That's jeffreyingman.com, or you can write me directly at sdauditioncoach@gmail.com. And if you want to contact me, I'll throw out my phone number, 619-247-7603. And I would love to have any discussion that you want about this process and about your future. I also do a lot of mentoring, which I didn't talk a lot about, but mentoring is not for coaching, I charge money. For mentoring, it is something that I feel is my service and is something that I feel really good about in terms of just providing information that's kind of off the clock, if you will. Sometimes small questions that a young person needs to ask, or just even to talk about in terms of their stresses as it relates to auditioning or post auditions, the assessments on those kinds of things. That's not coaching, that's a mentor situation. So you can contact me for both. I'm even, Emily knows that I don't charge for that first session at all. And the reason I don't is because I actually want to give you some starting information just to get you started. So even if you choose not to work with me, it's not I don't hold anything to that. I think it's important that you find the person who will mentor you, who will understand the nature of this particular type of audition, and who will be there for you as you work through that process. And for some of you, affordable, meaning you need to find someone who you can afford, right? And do not let money get in the way, as I won't let money get in the way, for what it's worth.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time.
Emily, great seeing you.
Awesome interview, Emily. All right, so now for our opportunities section. First off, we've got the 37th annual California Youth Playwrights Contest. In this contest, you must write a play and submit it to a panel of professional judges who will then evaluate your entry. If you are one of the winners, you'll receive a full production of your work. For more information on this contest, visit playwrightsproject.org. That sounds super cool, Katrina. What do you think about that opportunity? It sounds awesome.
Oh my gosh. That sounds amazing. I know we've done this so many times, but it's just such a great opportunity that I have to keep bringing it up.
100%.
So our second opportunity is going to be San Diego Junior Theater is starting summer camps. So I know last year summer camps kind of went out the window because of the pandemic. But this year we are finally, as people are starting to get vaccinated, as the world is starting to get healthier, we are able to do things like this. So definitely check that out. San Diego Junior Theater. It's their classes and camps for acting, singing, dancing, a bunch of other random things. And I would 100% check it out. And as an alumni of their summer camps, they're amazing, and it's such a great community. So definitely check that out. juniortheater.com. It's amazing.
I totally agree with that. I'm an alumni also from junior theater, and those classes and the camps were absolutely game changing. It's actually what got me into theater. So yeah, thank you, JT, and definitely go check out JT for sure.
Yes, we love you, JT. And for today's activity, we figured we would do something that would kind of touch your own heart or touch the heart of your future, something like that. But so today we encourage you to go to either your alumni school, the school that you graduated from, or go to your dream school or backup school or whatever school you are interested in, and do a virtual tour. I mean, it's something really interesting, and a lot of people don't know about it. A lot of colleges and universities offer virtual tours. So definitely check that out. It'd be really fun to see how much your campus has changed, or see what you might be going to in a few years.
It's also kind of fun and surreal just to like do a virtual tour of a college, especially since the norm has always been, oh man, I got to get the tickets and I'm going to go here and go here. And you plan a whole, trip, with like the little Indiana Jones map of the plane going this and there. Right. But now we just go on Google and go to the college, and it's like, we're already there. So it's very interesting. So definitely check it out. Even if you maybe didn't graduate from college, you're not interested, just go check it out, because it's just super weird and it's kind of fun. So, yeah.
Yes, so check it out, because it is super weird. Straight from
super weird. Yeah. So with that concludes our episode for this week. And I actually forgot to mention it in the beginning, but our next episode is going to be what, Katrina?
It's our final live episode.
There you go. So that's going to be really fun, and we hope to see as many of you there as we can. So without much further ado, thank you for watching this week. It's been Imahni
and Katrina.
Peace out.